let's talk about some of Tony Khan's great ideas. A couple weeks ago, we had a 5-3-1 on Tony Khan's worst ideas. Let's talk about his best ideas. Let's talk about some of the best things that Tony Khan has done.
If anybody doesn't mention the fact that we'll be celebrating on Dynamite the 69th day of the Acclaimed having their championships, I don't know how these lists will even count. I've got Albert Bettis, the hiring of CM Punk. Great idea. Really turned out well. The hiring of FTR, hiring of Samoa Joe, hiring of Bryan Danielson, hiring Kevin Kelly as lead announcer for Collision. How do you mention Kevin Kelly and not mention Nigel McGuinness? Nigel McGuinness is turning into my favorite heel announcer. But fun. Hey, Albert Bettis altogether not a bad list other than that first stupid one.
Hey, you know what's funny? I'm going to go my list next because I think it's interesting that the hirings are making this list when you thought about it. But I also got signing CM Punk because at the end of the day, it ended up putting a lot of eyes on the product. And it was a good initial move.
Have those eyes stayed on the product?
No, because you couldn't manage them. But that's aside the point. That's for another episode that we discussed.
Is it possible that CM Punk makes both lists?
He did. He made both my lists. I actually had it on the worst. So I have putting a show in Wembley. I think it's the best thing they've done all year when you really look at it. When business has struggled a little bit this year compared to other years, it did not struggle in Wembley, and it was a great optic looks filling up that stadium. So I think that was an awesome move booking that this year. Another thing, a small thing he's done that I think we take for granted now because it's been a couple-year-old company, but the emphasis on tag team wrestling. The fact that we have an emphasis on great tag teams and had great runs with tag teams and 6 men, and that's something that they should take credit for. All right, here's my top 2, though. Building relationships with other promotions. That is great. I'd love to see him actually do more stuff with other promotions. I feel like we've lagged on that a little bit. Now it's just mostly New Japan.
He's got a great promotion. We get great Mexican stars all the time because of his relationship with CMLL. He's got a great relationship with New Japan, hence the Forbidden Door pay-per-views.
Right.
I would like to see him put a little bit more thought into those pay-per-views ahead of time so that they don't feel like they're just thrown together. Maybe we could see a CMLL pay-per-view with New Japan and have all 3 as a joint.
My thing is they kind of stopped working with Impact and NWA, maybe for obvious reasons. They're U.S.
Maybe because they weren't getting anything from either one of those.
Maybe, but I thought it was. I enjoyed it. So personally, but I get it. At the end of the day, though, the final one I have for Tony Khan here, how he handled COVID, because he made it a point to put wrestlers in the crowd, and he had something going on there. Whereas if you look at WWE at that point, they had like that blank, empty chair look for a little while, and it was just not a good look. So I think overall, Tony Khan should really be credited for what they did during COVID.
He did have an advantage over the WWE. The WWE only had the Performance Center to use, which is a confined space. Tony Khan had an open-air stadium that his father owns where he could actually space people out and have them wherever he wanted to. So it is a great idea. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to take away from him, but he had a few tools there that the WWE did not have.
I'm going to bring you guys my list. I started off with the Daily's Place events. Like you said, I thought it was a good way to ride through COVID. I have buying ROH. No matter how he's handled ROH since he bought it, he got that tape library and is able to utilize it however he does. I've always been a big fan of how they've brought in indie talent, and some of that indie talent has turned into a roster member. Look at Bear Country. They were an early favorite that have been featured more and more. The Workhorsemen, another one, big indie talent, come in. There's a lot of other names.
Yeah, how about Eddie Kingston and Ricky Starks and what he did with them in the beginning of AEW, bringing them off of a hardly seen NWA program. He brought both of them in the middle of freaking COVID, and they've both have been rock stars for his organization.
100%. I've got using that international talent, those Japanese, those Mexican stars they've been bringing in. Like, look at the match they have tonight. It's going to be Commander versus El Hijo del Vikingo versus Pentagon. That is a huge match. I've got Wembley Stadium as number 5 because just what he did with that event is big. And I got to give the Jake rule, hiring CM Punk.
I just hope the Pentagon doesn't find out they're bringing in all those Mexicans. I've got Jesse from New Hampshire.
Yes.
He's got CM Punk, Daly's Place Events, Stadium Stampede. I have a feeling I know why Dave did his list so soon. I think a lot of the ideas are on these lists or what you had ahead of time, so you kind of put yourself out there, so you didn't look like you were copying them.
I wanted to come to bat for the CM Punk guy. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, blood and guts, which I agree with, and MJF creative freedom. The fact that he gives MJF the leeway that he does as a talented performer, I think is absolutely incredible, and that is something you got to give credit to Tony Khan for, because a lot of times people get nervous, especially MJF says a lot of stuff about Tony Khan.
Yeah.
So you got to give him credit for that.
I got Eddie C. Partnering with the Bucks and Omega, buying Ring of Honor, hiring Bryan Danielson, firing CM Punk, and All In. Man, could Punk just be any more of a polarizing guy? It's just so funny that he's making these lists for different reasons.
Well, here you go. And along with that, I've got kayfabe's little brother Dave. He's got Bryan Danielson. He's got finally firing CM Punk, All In, both. Bringing wrestling back to TNT and TBS, which is great. Bringing in foreign talent. So once again, that foreign talent continues to make the lists, and CM Punk continues to be a polarizing person.
John Lanford, All In. So All In keeps as another one that's getting mentioned here. Working with New Japan, again, that relationship with other promotions. Hiring MJF. Being so responsive to the fans, starting AEW. I will talk about that being so responsive to the fans. I will say that is a good thing most of the time.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword. So sometimes he's a little too responsive. Sometimes he'll jump off and respond to something without actually thinking first.
And does it? And it's something he doesn't even need to respond to. Just nobody cares about people with less than 1,000 followers on Twitter. Let it go.
Yeah, if the guy's got 3 followers on Twitter, maybe he could just let it go. I've got John White bringing in international stars, which is a hot topic throughout the lists. Buying ROH, so he agrees with Joe. Having Jericho be the first champion, I actually agree with that. I think having Jericho brought a lot of legitimacy to the championship, and he was able to work with a lot of great people. Having London host All In was fantastic, and the fact that they're bringing it in again next year is also a great idea.
What a shitty announcement, by the way, though. Just want to point that.
It was a shitty way to do the announcement, but we should go to that. Growing younger stars. This is something that hasn't been mentioned yet, but he has done a tremendous job of grooming people like Darby, MJF, Hook, and getting them over with the audience and getting them familiar with them. Another one that is starting to get good reactions. Look at what Sky Blue did this week. Sky Blue was a relatively unknown, but her and Julia Hart, who was also relatively unknown, both of them really came through this week.
We've got our eye on Sky Blue, but I've got a list from Chris Zauha, who has starting a wrestling company, Sting, Arn, Tully, and Shaq. Now, I'm still hurt that they couldn't make it work with Tully. And if we can take a little side trip, what do you guys think of the Ric Flair signing?
First of all, that was going to make my list, the fact that Ric Flair was the surprise for Sting. How is that not one of the great ideas that Tony Khan's come up with? That's just fantastic. To be more serious, I do have some good ones here. I've got letting go of Iron Anderson, Snot-Nosed Kid. That's a good idea. That kid's going nowhere. Number 2, getting rid of Cody Rhodes. He clearly has no future. Number 3, I did like Daly's Place. I thought it was a good use of the stadium, so that's actually a serious one. Number 4, I do like what he does with the younger talent. I think the way they're bringing Hook along slowly is fantastic. They've also done a great job with Billy Gunn's kids. They've done a great job with the Acclaim. They've done a great job with the younger talent and growing them. On a serious note, I love the International. I love what they do with the international talent. I love Forbidden Door. I love the fact that they mix in a lot of the talent. The fact that QT Marshall is the champion in Mexico now is absolutely phenomenal, since he doesn't deserve an American championship. Overall, Tony Khan's a putz, but he's had some good ideas.
As far as Ric Flair being signed to AEW, I'm going to take a wait and see approach, but it is obviously another big name. Let's just see how Flair is used.
Remember, they didn't just sign him. His energy drink is the official energy drink of AEW. So that's actually a good signing.
Who's that helping more, though? Is that helping Ric Flair's energy drink more, or is that helping AEW? I don't know the answer to that. So I guess we'll see. All right. I got Matthew Jeller here, hiring Punk, hiring Danielson, all in. That's all I got off the top of my head. Jake Rule. So he started off with the Jake Rule. Usually we finish with that. But
Yeah, you can't start with the Jake Rule. That makes it your number one pick.
I'll work in reverse. His number one was firing Phil, booking MJF, focusing on Chris Jericho early on so he can be the AEW legend and not considered a WWE legend because WWE sucks. No biases here. Unscripted promos and wrestlers wearing street clothes, not their merch, unlike the WWE because WWE sucks. 5, booking Sting like a legend, something WWE couldn't and wouldn't do because WWE sucks. And Jake Rule, booking Max like a star, unlike how WWE booked him because WWE sucks. Max? I'm talking about Maxwell Friedman? I don't know because MJF hasn't been there yet. So
I have 2 last-minute lists from Reddit, and I really like the thinking that went into this because for a lot of people, both when we asked them for Tony Khan's bad ideas, a lot of people shut up, didn't give us any. We got a lot of sarcasm for Tony Khan's good ideas, but here's 2 lists from Reddit. John Q11 said, pinning the promotion's future on 4 young promising guys from the start. 2, playing the long game with Hangman and heating him up slowly. 3, working with New Japan. 4, powering through the pandemic with creativity. We brought that up earlier. And 5, never using an authority figure on screen, even though they think he will cave soon. And then the last list I have from House Jolly 4660 on Reddit said starting a wrestling company in 2019 when there was an appetite for an alternative. 2, building MJF from day 1. 3, using a lot of veterans as pairing with younger, lesser known wrestlers. 4, wrestlers as the audience during the pandemic. And 5, focusing on Hangman / Omega and a strong tag division in the first couple of years of the company. So I thought those were some thoughtful answers.
I love the way they heated up Hangman slowly, but then they cooled him down very quickly. So that was great.
for my number 3, the third on the list, I'm going to put it as a tie. The firing and hiring of CM Punk. Since Punk was all over, I'm just going to put him in the number 3 spot. Kind of canceled out for the final 2, but just recognize that people loved whether he got rid of him or he hired him. It was something that people definitely reacted to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That first time he came out in Chicago, I think is one of the best moments in AEW history just because of how absolutely incredible and off the hook it was.
Absolutely. Number 2, I'm going to say the Wembley Stadium show.
The Wembley Stadium show is the best thing he's ever done. I mean, I didn't have it on my list because I was too busy being sarcastic and snarky. But the Wembley Stadium show is the best thing he's ever done. He packed it in there. And I love how he continues to say, sold more tickets than any wrestling event ever, because while the WWE has had bigger events, they have a tendency of giving some of those tickets away.
Now, the number 1 I had was just working with other promotions because I just think that that's long-term going to be one of the big successes of him. And I think that's...
Well, it's brought some of the biggest stars he's got going right now. The only thing that I wish he would stop doing is working with Okada so that he stops hurting Bryan Danielson.
I think that was Orange Cassidy, by the way. Apparently, Bryan...
All I know is Okada was in both matches, and now Bryan Danielson's had a broken arm and a broken orbital bone.
Yeah, apparently Bryan went in there with injured orbital bone, and I guess what happened with Orange Cassidy, and I don't know, like someone said.
That orange punch does look so vicious.
That is going to be our number 1 this week. We are going to go with the relationship with New Japan and other promotions.